They say the lantern guides the lost, but here...
I never thought I'd die alone in the mountains. But when the radio went silent 3 days ago, that became a very real possibility. My name is Garrison Fletcher, and I'm writing this down because someone needs to know what happened up here. What's still happening? The world ended while I was hiking the Dolomites, which sounds almost laughable now. I came to Italy for a solo trek, needed to clear my head after the divorce, after losing the job, after everything fell apart in what I thought was the worst year of my life. Turns out the universe was just warming up. I'd been on the trail for 5 days when things started feeling wrong. The first sign was the helicopter. I was ascending toward the Puez-Odal Ridge, maybe 7,000 feet up, when this military chopper came screaming over the peak so low I could see the pilot's helmet. It wasn't following any normal flight path, just hauling east like something was chasing it. I stood there on this narrow trail with my pack digging into my shoulders, watching it disappear into the gray October sky, and I felt this twist in my gut that I couldn't explain. The second sign was the silence on the mountain. I'd passed maybe a dozen other hikers over the previous days, Germans, Austrians, a couple from Slovakia. The trails weren't packed this late in the season, but they weren't empty either. That day, October 17th, I didn't see a single person. Not one. The refugios, those Alpine shelters scattered across the mountains, should have had people prepping for winter closure. But when I stopped at Refugio Firenze around noon, the door was locked and nobody answered my knocking. I should have turned back then. Should have descended into the valley, found a road, figured out what was wrong. But I'm stubborn, always have been. Thought maybe there was some local holiday I didn't know about, or maybe the caretakers had taken an extra day off. The weather was holding, I had food for another week, and the trail to Refugio Puez, my planned stop for the night, was only 4 hours ahead. So I kept climbing. The third sign was the smoke. Around 2 in the afternoon, I came around a rocky outcrop and saw it. Thick black columns rising from the valley to the north. Not campfire smoke, not controlled burns. This was structure fire smoke. Multiple sources. The kind of smoke that means something catastrophic. I could see Ortiz down there, this beautiful little town I'd passed through days earlier. And now it looked like someone had dropped bombs on it. That's when I pulled out my phone. No signal, which wasn't surprising at this elevation, but the emergency alert system had queued up 17 messages that must have come through the last time I had coverage. The previews were in Italian, German, and English, and they all said variations of the same thing. Shelter in place. Avoid contact. Do not approach the infected. I stood there on that mountain path, with the wind picking up and the temperature dropping, and those 17 alerts glowing on my screen. And I felt reality tilt sideways. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Infected was a word from movies, from games, from stories people told to scare themselves. It wasn't a word that appeared in government alerts on a sunny Tuesday afternoon in the Italian Alps. But the smoke was real. The empty trails were real. The helicopter had been real. I pulled up the last message I'd received. A text from my brother Hollis back in Oregon, sent 16 hours ago. Gar, if you're seeing this, get somewhere safe. Not a joke. Shit is going sideways everywhere. People are attacking each other. Stay away from city. I'm taking Marin and the kids to the cabin. Love you, brother. My hands were shaking when I tried to call him. No signal. Tried again. Nothing. Open my email. 3 messages had downloaded before I lost coverage. One from my ex-wife, Tabitha. I know we aren't talking, but please be safe wherever you are. One from my buddy Kip. Dude, this is fucked, are you seeing this? And one from my sister Georgina with the subject line urgent that just said, come home now. That was it. That was all the information I had when the world ended. I'm trying to remember exactly what I thought in that moment. The human brain does funny things when reality breaks. I think part of me still believed it was some kind of coordinated prank or mass hysteria. The rational part of my brain, the part that had gotten me through engineering school, through 12 years of marriage, through building a career, that part was saying there had to be a logical explanation. A chemical spill, maybe. A terrorist attack with some kind of agent. Something containable. The wind was getting stronger, and dark clouds were building over the western peaks. A storm was coming, and I was still 2 hours from the refugio. I made a decision. Get to shelter, wait out the storm, and in the morning descend into the valley to find out what was really happening. Simple plan. Reasonable plan. I started hiking faster. The trail to Refugio Pues cuts along the side of a massive limestone face, switchbacking up through sparse pine and then into pure rock. Beautiful country, the kind of landscape that makes you feel small and significant at the same time. I'd been looking forward to this section of the trek for months. Had the topographic maps memorized, had read every trip report I could find. Now I was practically running up it, my breath coming hard in the thin air, my pack bouncing against my spine. The first drops of rain hit about 40 minutes later. Cold rain, almost sleet, driven horizontal by wind that howled through the peaks. Visibility dropped to maybe 30 feet. I pulled on my rain shell and kept moving, following the trail markers, red and white paint blazes on rocks every 20 meters. My hands were numb. Water was running down my neck. This was bad weather, even for October in the Alps, the kind of sudden storm that kills unprepared hikers every year. I nearly missed the refugio completely. The building just emerged from the rain and mist like a ghost ship. A 2-story stone structure clinging to the mountainside. Shutters closed, no lights in the windows. But the door was unlocked. Thank God the door was unlocked. I stumbled inside and pushed the door shut against the wind, and suddenly everything was quiet, except for my breathing and the hammer of rain on the roof. The interior was dark, but I fumbled out my headlamp and swept the beam around. Alpine refugios are amazing places. They're not fancy, just basic shelters for hikers. But they're positioned in these incredible locations, and they're built to last. Refugio Pues was typical. A large common room with long wooden tables, a kitchen area behind a counter, a wood stove in the corner, stairs leading up to the sleeping quarters. The walls were covered with photos of summer hikers and old skiing posters, and a faded map of the region. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed weird in the empty space. "Anyone here? Hello?" Nothing. The place had clearly been closed for the season. The stove was cold, the kitchen counter was clean, and when I checked the tap at the sink, only a dribble of water came out before it sputtered dry. They'd shut off the water. I tried the light switches, no power either. The refugio was winterized and empty. But I wasn't going back out in that storm. I dropped my pack on one of the tables and started exploring. The kitchen had been pretty well cleaned out. But I found some dry goods in a locked pantry that I managed to jimmy open with my multi-tool. Pasta, rice, some canned tomatoes, bouillon cubes, salt, pepper, sugar, coffee. Not a lot, but enough to supplement my own supplies. There were plates and cups in the cabinets, pots and pans hanging from hooks, a manual can opener, matches. The wood stove had a stack of split logs beside it and kindling in a bucket. I got a fire going, stripped off my wet layers, and hung them on chairs around the stove to dry. Then I just sat there for a while, watching the flames, listening to the storm, trying to process what was happening. My watch said 5:47 p.m. The sun was setting somewhere beyond the clouds and rain. I was alone in a mountain shelter during what appeared to be some kind of global emergency, with no communication, no clear information, and no real plan beyond wait until morning. I heated some water on the stove and made myself a freeze-dried meal from my pack supplies. Beef stroganoff, which tasted like cardboard and chemicals but was hot and had calories. While I ate, I kept checking my phone. No signal. The battery was at 62%. I had a solar charger in my pack, but without sun, it was just dead weight. The rational thing to do was sleep, conserve energy, and head down at first light. But I couldn't shake this feeling that descending might be the wrong move. Those alerts had said, shelter in place. The smoke I'd seen suggested the valleys weren't safe. And if this really was some kind of infection, some kind of outbreak, then maybe elevation was good. Maybe being isolated was good. I decided to spend the night and reassess in the morning. The sleeping quarters upstairs were freezing and dark, so I dragged a mattress down to the common room and set it up near the stove. Outside, the storm was getting worse. I could hear the wind screaming around the corners of the building, could hear loose shutters banging somewhere. The walls shook with particularly strong gusts. I tried to read a book on my phone, trying to save battery, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to those words, the infected. What did that mean? Infected with what? And why the urgent warnings to avoid contact? Around 9 p.m., I went to one of the windows and carefully opened the interior shutters. The external shutters were closed, but had slats that let me see out if I pressed my face close to the glass. Rain was sheeting down. Lightning flickered somewhere over the eastern peaks. And down below, maybe 1,000 feet down the mountainside, I saw lights. Not electric lights. Fires. Multiple fires scattered across the dark landscape, flickering orange dots in the void. Too many to count. Too chaotic to be campfires or controlled burns. The valleys were burning. I closed the shutters and locked them. That first night, I barely slept. Every sound seemed amplified. The wind, the rain, the creak of the buildings settling, the pop and hiss of the fire dying down. I kept my knife unsheathed next to the mattress, which was irrational because what was I going to do if someone broke in? Stab them? I'd never been in a fight in my life. But holding the knife made me feel slightly less helpless. Around 3 a.m., I heard something that wasn't the storm. Footsteps. Not inside the building, outside, on the gravel area in front of the refugio. Slow, uneven footsteps, barely audible under the wind. Then they stopped. For maybe 2 full minutes, there was nothing, and I was starting to think I'd imagined it when something banged against the door. I sat up fast, heart hammering. The bang came again, definitely someone or something hitting the door. Not knocking, just impact, like someone had walked into it. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Is someone out there?" No response. Just another bang, and then the sound of something scraping down the wood. I grabbed my headlamp but didn't turn it on. Instead, I crept toward the door in the dark, every horror movie I'd ever seen flashing through my mind. The smart thing would have been to stay put. The smart thing would have been to wait and see what happened. But what if it was another hiker? What if someone was hurt, disoriented in the storm? I put my hand on the door handle. "I'm going to open this door," I said loudly. "If you need help, step back." The banging stopped. I counted to 10, then slowly pulled the door open about 6 inches, keeping my foot braced against it. The wind immediately tried to rip it out of my hand. Rain blew in, soaking me. I fumbled my headlamp on and pointed the beam out into the storm. At first, I didn't see anything. Just rain and darkness and the vague shapes of rocks beyond the gravel. Then the beam caught something at the edge of its reach, and my blood turned to ice. A person, or what used to be a person. It was maybe 20 feet away, standing motionless in the rain. Definitely human-shaped. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But something about the posture was wrong. The head tilted at a weird angle, and the arms hung too loose. And even through the rain and darkness, I could see that the clothing was torn and dark, with something that probably wasn't water. We stared at each other for 3 seconds that felt like an hour. Then it moved. Not walked, it moved, lurched forward with this jerky, uncoordinated gait, like someone who'd forgotten how their legs worked. And the sound it made. I'll never forget that sound. A wet, rasping moan that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite animal, just wrong. I slammed the door and locked it. The thing hit the door maybe 2 seconds later, a solid thump that shook the frame. Then again, and again. Steady impacts, no intelligence behind them, just relentless repetition. I backed away from the door, breathing too fast, my vision tunneling. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. That hadn't been a person, not really. That had been something else. Something that wore human shape but wasn't human anymore. The banging continued for maybe 5 minutes, then stopped. I stood in the dark common room, headlamp beam jittering across the walls because my hands were shaking so bad, listening to the silence that was somehow worse than the noise. Eventually, I heard the footsteps again, that same uneven scraping gait, moving away from the door, around the side of the building. I tracked the sound as best I could. It seemed to circle the entire refugio once, pausing at each window before finally fading into the storm. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. When dawn finally came, gray and reluctant through the cracks in the shutters, I was still sitting against the wall by the door, knife in hand. Every muscle rigid with tension. The storm had passed. I could hear water dripping from the eaves, wind sighing through the rocks, birds calling. Normal mountain morning sounds. I stood up slowly, joints popping, and went to the window. Opened the inner shutters carefully and peered through the slats of the outer ones. Morning light revealed the area around the refugio in sharp detail. The building sat on a relatively flat shelf carved into the mountainside, maybe 40 feet wide. Beyond that, the terrain dropped away steeply on 3 sides, too steep to easily climb. There was only one approach, the trail I'd come up yesterday, which switched back down through loose scree and rock outcrops. And standing on that trail, maybe 50 feet below the refugio, was the thing from last night. In daylight, it was worse. I could see now that it had been a man once, middle-aged, wearing the torn remains of hiking clothes. But the way he stood was all wrong, weight distributed unevenly, one arm hanging limp. And his face. Even from this distance, I could see that his face was gray, mouth slack, eyes open but somehow empty. He wasn't looking at the refugio. He was just standing there, swaying slightly like he was waiting for something. I watched him for maybe 20 minutes. He didn't move, didn't react to anything. Just stood there in the cold morning air, this broken puppet of a man. Finally, I worked up the courage to check the other windows. The back of the building looked out over the steep drop. Nothing there. The side windows showed more rocky terrain, some stunted pines, distant peaks sharp against the clearing sky. Empty. But when I checked the front again, there were now 2 of them. The man had been joined by something that might have been a woman once. She wore the shredded remains of a red jacket, and she was missing her right shoe. Her exposed foot was torn and bloody. She stood next to the man, same empty swaying, same awful stillness. I needed to think, needed to figure out what was happening and what I was going to do about it. The facts as I understood them. 1. Some kind of outbreak had occurred. Infection, the alerts had said. 2. Infected people became those things. Whatever they were. 3. 2 of them were currently blocking the only easy way down from this refugio. 4. I had no communication with the outside world. 5. I had food for maybe 10 days if I was careful, less if I wasn't. 6. It was late October in the Alps, which meant snow was coming soon. Option 1. Try to sneak past them and descend to the valley. Find help, find answers, find other survivors. High risk. They'd shown they could hear and react to movement, but potentially high reward if there was rescue or safety below. Option 2. Stay here and wait for rescue. The refugio was solid, defensible, and I had supplies. But rescue required someone knowing I was here and being able to reach me, neither of which seemed likely given the scope of what was happening. Option 3. Stay here and try to survive long term. The refugio had resources, was isolated, and was easily defended. But winter was coming, and I had no long-term food source. I chose option 2 with a plan to shift to option 3 if necessary. Wait a few days, see if the situation resolved, see if rescue came. Ration supplies. Stay hidden, survive. It's been 3 days since I made that choice, and I'm starting to think there's no rescue coming. Let me back up and explain what those 3 days have been like, because time moves differently when you're trapped. Day 1, that first full day after the storm, I spent mostly watching. I rotated between windows, keeping track of the 2 infected on the trail below. They barely moved. Around noon, the man shuffled a few feet to the left. Around 3 p.m., the woman tilted her head back like she was looking at the sky, held that position for 5 minutes, then lowered it again. That was it. They didn't leave, didn't try to approach the building again, just stood there like broken statues. I tried my phone every hour, no signal. The battery was down to 40% despite me barely using it. I turned it completely off to conserve power. For food that first day, I ate lightly. Some crackers from my pack, a handful of trail mix, water from my bottles. I needed to assess exactly what supplies I had before I started consuming the refugio's stores. So I spent the afternoon doing inventory. From my pack, 6 freeze-dried meals, various types, each about 800 calories. 1 bag of trail mix, maybe 1,500 calories total. 1 package of crackers, 2 protein bars, water filter and purification tablets, first aid kit, knife, multi-tool, fire starter, compass, headlamp, extra batteries, rain gear, extra base layers, hat, gloves, sleeping bag rated to 20 degrees, emergency bivy sack, 50 feet of paracord, topographic maps of the region, paperback book, a farewell to arms, which felt grimly appropriate now. From the refugio, 2 dried pasta, 1 rice, 4 cans of tomatoes, 1 can of beans, bouillon cubes, maybe 20. Salt, pepper, sugar, dried herbs, coffee, maybe enough for 10 cups. Various condiments, large pot, small pot, frying pan, plates, bowls, utensils, matches, 3 boxes, candles, maybe a dozen. Stack of firewood, enough for maybe a week if I was conservative. 6 wool blankets in the upstairs sleeping quarters, various cleaning supplies, toilet paper, 4 rolls. If I was very careful, I had maybe 2 weeks of food, 3 if I was willing to be hungry. After that, I didn't want to think about after that. Water was less of a concern. The refugio's plumbing was shut off, but there was snow in the shaded areas around the building, and I could melt it. Not ideal, required fuel, which meant firewood, but doable. Plus, I'd seen a small tarn about a quarter-mile east when I was hiking up. If I could get to it safely, that would be a better source. The wood situation concerned me. A week's worth wasn't much, and nights were already dropping below freezing. I could see more firewood stacked under a tarp on the back side of the building, but getting to it meant going outside, and going outside meant potentially dealing with those things on the trail. As the sun set that first evening, I allowed myself a small fire in the stove, just enough to take the edge off the cold and heat some water for pasta. I ate sitting at one of the long tables, my headlamp the only light, listening to the building creak and settle around me. Outside, full darkness came quickly in the mountains. I carefully checked each window before the light faded completely. The 2 infected were still there on the trail, now just silhouettes in the dusk. As I watched, a 3rd one appeared from down below. Another man, this one moving with that same awful jerky gait. He reached the other 2 and simply stopped, joining their vigil. 3 now. 3 that I could see. I wondered if they knew I was up here. If knew was even the right word for whatever passed through their broken minds. They'd heard me or sensed me somehow during the storm. That bang on the door hadn't been random. But now they just stood there, not trying to reach the building, not leaving, waiting. That night, I pushed one of the heavy wooden tables against the door as an additional barricade. Probably wouldn't stop a determined assault, but it made me feel slightly more secure. I dragged the mattress even closer to the stove and built up the fire more than was probably wise, because the dark was oppressive and the cold was seeping through the walls, and I needed something to push back against the fear. I tried to read Hemingway by headlamp, but the words wouldn't stick in my brain. Instead, I found myself thinking about Hollis, my brother. He'd said he was taking his family to the cabin. That would be the place our dad built up near Mount Hood. 3 hours from anything, solar panels and a well and enough supplies to ride out a bad winter. If anyone could survive whatever this was, it would be Hollis. He'd always been the prepared one, the one with plans and backup plans. I thought about Tabitha too, my ex-wife. We'd split 6 months ago after she found out about the affair I'd had with a coworker. Messy, painful, the kind of ending where you both say things you can't take back. The last time we'd spoken was through lawyers about dividing the furniture. And now she'd sent me that email. Please be safe wherever you are. After everything, she still cared enough to send that. I thought about my parents, retired in Arizona, my sister Georgina, working in Boston, friends, co-workers, people I'd hiked with, people I'd known my whole life. Where were they now? Were they safe? Were they even still alive? The fire burned down to coals, and I fed it one more log, the last of the night. Tomorrow I'd need to be more conservative. Tomorrow I'd need to figure out how to access that woodpile out back without drawing attention. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. One day at a time. Day 2 started with the sound of something falling. I jerked awake, confused about where I was, why I was cold, why my back hurt. Then reality crashed back in, and I grabbed for my knife, heart pounding, trying to locate the sound. It came again, a clatter from somewhere upstairs. The infected had gotten inside. That was my first thought, and it sent pure adrenaline spiking through my veins. I was off the mattress and moving before I'd fully processed it, knife in hand, trying to remember the layout of the upper floor. The stairs creaked under my weight. Cold morning light was filtering through cracks in the shutters. The sound came again, definitely from one of the sleeping rooms. I crept down the hallway, past doors hanging open to reveal rows of bunk beds, until I reached the room at the far end. The door was closed. The sound was coming from behind it. "Who's there?" My voice came out rough. "I'm armed." Silence, then a scrabbling sound, and a soft thump. I tested the door handle, unlocked. Took a breath, pushed it open fast, knife raised, ready for... A bird. A small brown bird, sparrow maybe, was trapped in the room, flying against the shuttered window, falling, trying again. It must have gotten in through a gap in the roof or the eaves, and now it couldn't find its way out. I almost laughed from the relief. Almost. Instead, I just stood there, breathing hard, watching this tiny creature panic against the barriers that trapped it. "I know the feeling," I muttered. I opened the shutters and the window. The external ones here weren't locked. And the bird found the gap and was gone in a blur of wings. I stood at the window for a minute, feeling the cold morning air on my face, looking out at the mountains. From this angle, I couldn't see the trail where the infected stood, but I could see the valley to the north. More smoke down there, thinner than before, but still present. And something else. Movement on one of the distant peaks. I squinted, wishing I had binoculars. Was that, yes, a helicopter far away, following the ridgeline. Too distant to see any markings, too far to signal even if I'd wanted to risk it. So there were still helicopters flying. That meant some infrastructure was functioning somewhere. That was good, right? That was a positive sign. The helicopter disappeared behind a peak and didn't return. I closed the window and the shutters and went back downstairs. The fire was dead, just gray ash. I used some of my precious matches to restart it, got water heating for coffee. The caffeine would help me think. While I waited, I checked the front windows. 5 of them now. 5 infected standing on the trail, spaced out in an irregular line, all facing the refugio. 2 more had arrived during the night without me hearing them. All of them just standing there, swaying slightly, waiting. My hands were shaking as I poured the coffee. This was getting worse. They were accumulating. Maybe they could smell me somehow. Or maybe they were drawn to the building itself. Or maybe it was random. But either way, the path down was now blocked by 5 of those things. And even if I could somehow get past them, run, push, fight, there would be more in the valleys below. I'd seen the smoke. I'd seen how many fires were burning. The lowlands were compromised. I was stuck here. The realization settled over me like a weight. This wasn't a temporary situation. This wasn't shelter in place for 48 hours while authorities contained an incident. This was survival, long-term, in an Alpine refugio with limited supplies and winter coming. I needed to change my mindset. Needed to stop thinking like a stranded hiker and start thinking like, what? A survivor? A refugee? Someone who might be here for weeks or months? First priority, extend my food supplies. I had 2 weeks, maybe 3 if I stretched it. That wasn't enough. I needed to find more. I spent day 2 conducting a more thorough search of the refugio. The main floor I'd already explored, but I'd been cursory about it. Now I went through every cabinet, every drawer, every container. Behind a shelf in the kitchen, I found a box of hardtack crackers that had probably been there for years, stale but still edible. In a cupboard I'd missed, 3 more cans, green beans this time. Under the sink, half a bottle of olive oil. Not much, but every calorie counted. Upstairs was more promising. The sleeping quarters had 6 rooms, each with bunks for 8 to 10 people. In the warden's room, a slightly larger space with only 2 beds and a small desk. I found a footlocker that wasn't locked. Inside, 2 more wool blankets, a battery-powered radio, a first aid kit more extensive than mine, a bottle of grappa, half full, and, most valuable, a large chocolate bar, the fancy Swiss kind that tourists bought. It was probably left behind by a guest or a worker. The chocolate alone was maybe 600 calories. I held that chocolate bar like it was gold, because in a way, it was. The radio was dead, batteries corroded, but the first aid kit was useful. I transferred the supplies to my own kit. More bandages, antibiotic ointment, pain relievers, scissors, tweezers. In another room, I found a forgotten backpack shoved under a bed. It contained a pair of wool socks. Too small for me, but I took them anyway. A paperback in German, and, amazingly, a full bag of dried apricots. Whoever had left this pack behind, they'd just given me another 2 days of food. By noon, I'd searched every room and found 3 additional cans of vegetables. The hardtack crackers, the chocolate bar, the dried apricots, half a bottle of olive oil, a forgotten packet of instant soup, 2 tea bags. Not a huge haul, but it pushed my timeline out. Maybe 3.5 weeks now if I was careful. 4 if I was hungry. The problem was long-term. 4 weeks might as well be forever if rescue was coming. But if it wasn't, I'd starve up here long before spring. I couldn't think about that yet. First survive to tomorrow, then worry about next week. The afternoon of day 2 was when I tackled the wood problem. I was down to about 3 days of fuel for the stove at my current usage rate, and the pile outside had maybe a full cord. Enough for weeks if I could access it. But accessing it meant going outside where the infected could see me. I spent an hour just watching them from various windows, trying to understand their behavior. They responded to sound. That much was clear. That first one had come to the door during the storm when I was making noise. But now, they just stood there. I knocked on the window frame, quietly at first, then louder. No reaction. Dropped a book on the floor. Nothing. They didn't respond to sound alone, apparently. Or maybe they did. But only certain sounds. Movement sounds. Living sounds. The wood pile was on the back side of the building, accessed through a small door off the kitchen that I'd assumed was a closet. When I opened it, I found a narrow mudroom. Hooks for coats, boot bench, and the exterior door. The door had a simple latch, no lock. I pressed my ear to it and listened. Heard nothing but wind and the distant call of a raven. Slowly, carefully, I lifted the latch and cracked the door open an inch. The woodpile was right there, maybe 6 feet away, stacked neatly under a corrugated metal roof. Between me and it, open space, rocky ground, full exposure. If any of the infected came around the building while I was out there, I'd be visible, vulnerable. But I needed the wood. I decided to move fast, get out, load up as much as I could carry, get back in, lock the door. 30 seconds max. I pulled on my rain jacket, extra layer of protection, or at least it made me feel that way, grabbed a canvas tarp I'd found to use as a carry sling, and stepped outside. The cold hit me immediately. It had to be low 40s, with a wind that cut right through my layers. I moved quickly to the woodpile, started loading split logs into the tarp. They were good hardwood, well seasoned, dry, despite being stored outside. I could hear my own breathing, loud in my ears. Could hear every scrape of wood on wood as I worked. 15 seconds. 20. I had maybe 40 pounds loaded. Enough for 5 or 6 days if I was conservative. Enough. That's when I heard the sound, that wet, rasping moan. I turned fast, nearly dropping the tarp. One of the infected had come around the corner of the building. The woman in the red jacket, her torn foot leaving smeared prints on the rocky ground. She was maybe 20 feet away, and when she saw me, she jerked into motion, moving faster than I'd seen them move before. Not running, but that awful lurching gait, arms reaching. I grabbed the tarp and bolted for the door. She was between me and the entrance. I'd have to go around her or through her, and neither option seemed survivable. My brain was screaming contradictory instructions. Fight, run, hide, freeze. I did what instinct dictated. I swung the heavy tarp of wood like a weapon. It caught her in the side and she went down, tumbling across the rocks. The tarp split and logs scattered everywhere. She was already trying to get up, making that horrible sound, her gray face turning toward me. I didn't wait. I ran for the door, got inside, slammed it shut, and dropped the latch. Then I grabbed the boot bench and shoved it against the door as a brace. For maybe 30 seconds, I just leaned there, gasping, listening to my heart hammer. Then I heard her outside, the scraping of her movements, the thump as she found the door and began hitting it. The latch was solid, and the door opened inward, so even with her constant pressure, it wasn't going to open. But the sound was nightmare fuel. Steady, rhythmic impacts, like a drummer keeping time. Thump, thump, thump. I left the mudroom, closed the interior door behind me, and stood in the kitchen trying to process what had just happened. I'd touched one of them, had been within arm's reach. If I'd been 1 second slower. The thumping continued, muffled now, but still audible. After maybe 5 minutes, it stopped. I crept back to the mudroom and listened at the door. Silence. Then the scraping sound of her moving away. I'd gotten 0 firewood. Worse, I'd confirmed that they could move faster than their normal shambling gait when they detected prey. And I'd revealed that I was definitely here and definitely alive. Day 2 ended with me huddled by a small fire, the last of my original supply, trying to figure out how I was going to survive the next week, let alone the next month. Day 3, today, started with the sound of more of them arriving. I counted 9 now. 9 infected spread across the trail and the approaches to the refugio, all of them in various states of decay and damage. It had snowed lightly during the night, just a dusting, but enough to make everything white and pure and utterly alien. The infected stood in the snow like dead trees, frost collecting on their clothes, on their exposed skin, in their hair. They didn't seem to feel the cold. I was almost out of firewood. 3 logs left. Maybe enough for 1 more night if I was miserly with it. After that, I'd freeze or I'd have to go outside again. The door at the back was still barricaded. I hadn't moved the boot bench. Even if I wanted to try again, that area was probably being watched now. Food was going to last longer than heat, which was almost funny. I could be well fed and frozen, or warm and starving. Neither option was great. I spent the morning doing what I'd been doing a lot of, watching and thinking. The infected outside weren't attacking the building. They weren't trying to break in. They were just there, waiting. For what? Around noon, something changed. I was at the front window when I saw movement on the upper trail, above the refugio, on the ridge. More infected coming down? But no, this was different. This was a person, an actual living person, moving with purpose and coordination, picking their way down the steep, rocky trail. I couldn't believe it. Another survivor. They, I couldn't tell gender from this distance, were wearing a bright yellow jacket and carrying a large pack. They were maybe 200 yards up the trail, navigating carefully around patches of ice. And they hadn't seen the infected yet, because the terrain blocked their view of the lower approach. I had seconds to make a decision. If I warned them, I'd give away my position to the infected. If I didn't warn them, they'd walk right into that group on the trail and almost certainly die. I grabbed a metal pot from the kitchen and a wooden spoon and went to the window. Started banging them together as loud as I could, clang, 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 while shouting, "Stop! Don't come down! Infected below!" The person in yellow stopped and looked around, trying to find the source of the sound, and every infected outside the refugio turned toward my window. "Up here!" I shouted, still banging. "In the refugio. Don't come down the trail. Go around." The person spotted me. I saw them wave. Then they saw the infected beginning to move toward the building, and they understood. Here's what happened next, and I'm still not sure if it was brave or stupid or both. The person in yellow started yelling and waving their arms, deliberately drawing the infected's attention. It worked. About half of the group, 5 or 6 of them, turned away from the refugio and started shambling up the trail toward the noise. The person in yellow kept their distance, moving along the ridge, leading the infected away like some kind of demented Pied Piper. The remaining infected, 3 or 4, stayed focused on the refugio, on me, banging on the door I'd been shouting from. After maybe 10 minutes, the person in yellow had drawn their group far enough away that they could cut east, traversing across the slope above the building. I lost sight of them for a while, then picked them up again on the far side. They were working their way down through broken terrain, angling toward the back of the refugio. I ran to the rear window and opened it. "Here," I called out, not too loud. "Around back." They spotted me and changed direction. Up close now, I could see it was a woman, maybe 30, dark hair pulled back, face wind-burned and exhausted. She reached the rocky area below my window and looked up. "Can you climb?" I called down. "I can't open the doors. They're watching them." She assessed the wall, rough stone, plenty of handholds, and nodded. "Throw down a rope if you have one." I ran to get my paracord, tied one end to a bed frame, and dropped the other end out the window. She clipped it to her pack with a carabiner, then started climbing. It was only about 12 feet, but the rock was icy and she was clearly exhausted. Twice she slipped and caught herself. On the third try, she made it high enough to grab the windowsill, and I reached down and grabbed her jacket and helped haul her through. We both collapsed on the floor of the sleeping room, breathing hard. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I thought I was dead. "Are you bit?" I asked. "Scratched? Any contact with them?" "No, nothing. I've been avoiding them for 3 days. You?" "Same. Well, almost had contact yesterday, but no, I'm Garrison." "Hester," she said. "Hester Vaughn, from Colorado." She sat up and looked around the room, then at me. "You're American." "Oregon. You?" "Boulder. I was here with a climbing group. We were supposed to summit Marmalada when..." She trailed off, and I saw something break in her expression. "They're all dead, my whole group. We tried to get back to Kanazai, and they were everywhere, in the towns, on the roads. We got separated, and I just kept going up. Figured elevation might be safer." "Same logic," I said. "I've been here 3 days. Before that, I was on a solo trek." She was looking around the room more carefully now, taking in the details. "This refugio, you have food?" Water? Some. Enough for a couple weeks if I'm careful. Now that you're here, less, obviously. That came out harsher than I meant it. She caught it and gave me a sharp look. I have supplies too. I'm not here to take yours. I'm here because that was the only shelter I could see, and those things were chasing me. I know. Sorry. It's been a weird 3 days. She almost smiled. Yeah. Weird is one word for it. We went downstairs and I helped her get her pack off. It was heavy, maybe 40 pounds. She started unpacking. A camp stove, fuel canister, a cooking pot, water filter, a bag of trail mix, energy bars, a rope, climbing gear, a sleeping bag, and, most valuable, 4 freeze-dried meals. We can pool resources, she said. Figure this out together, if that's okay with you. I looked at this exhausted woman who'd just risked her life to draw infected away from my position, who'd climbed a wall to reach safety, who was now offering to share her supplies. Yeah, I said. That's okay with me. We spent the rest of day 3 getting to know each other and planning. Hester was a software engineer, climbed on weekends, had come to the Dolomites with a group from her climbing gym. She'd been in Italy for 4 days when everything fell apart. Her group had tried to descend into Canazai to find transportation out, but the town was overrun. They'd gotten split up in the chaos. She'd seen her climbing partner, a woman named Winona, get dragged down by 3 infected, had heard the screams, had kept running. She'd spent 2 days moving through the mountains, staying high, avoiding the valleys, had seen helicopters, had seen fires, had seen infected wandering alone and in small groups. The outbreak wasn't just local. It was everywhere she could see. Every town, every village, smoke and chaos. Do you think it's global? She asked. Or just Europe? I don't know. My brother texted me that things were going sideways everywhere. But I don't know if he meant everywhere or just everywhere in the US. My phone died yesterday, she said. I have a charger, but no solar panel. You? Phone's off to save battery. Solar charger, but no sun. I gestured at the overcast sky outside. We discussed our situation. Between us, we had maybe 3 weeks of food, more if we stretched it. Water wasn't an immediate problem. Heat was, I explained the firewood situation. Defense was concerning. The refugio was solid, but the infected knew we were here now. 9 of them outside, maybe more coming. I drew about 5 of them away, Hester said. But they might come back. They don't seem to leave, I said. The ones that show up just stay. I don't know if they're waiting or if they just don't know where else to go. We decided on some basic rules. 1, ration food strictly. 1 small meal per day plus snacks to maintain energy. 2, keep noise to a minimum. No more banging pots. 3, maintain watch schedule. Always someone monitoring the approaches. 4, if rescue comes, 1 person goes while the other stays defensive. 5, pool all resources. No hoarding. As night fell on day 3, Hester and I sat by the small fire I'd built from my last logs, eating a shared freeze-dried meal. And I felt something I hadn't felt in 72 hours. A small measure of hope. I wasn't alone anymore. But that night, things got worse. I was on first watch. Hester was sleeping on a mattress near the stove, when I heard new sounds outside. Not the moaning or shuffling of the infected. Something else. Voices. Human voices. I went to the front window and peered through the slats. The moon had risen, nearly full, and I could see the trail clearly. The infected were still there. 9 dark figures standing in various positions. But beyond them, farther down the trail, I saw lights. Flashlights or headlamps. Multiple sources moving up toward the refugio. More survivors? or something else. The lights got closer, and I could make out figures now. 4 or 5 people climbing the trail. They were moving cautiously, clearly aware of the infected. I watched as one of the infected turned toward them and began that awful shambling approach. One of the figures raised something. I saw the muzzle flash before I heard the gunshot, a sharp crack that echoed across the mountainside. The infected went down. 3 more shots in quick succession, and 3 more infected fell. Hester was awake now, standing beside me. "Are they military?" she whispered. "Can't tell." But they had guns, and they were shooting infected, which meant they were organized and probably not hostile to survivors. Probably. The group cleared the remaining infected with efficient shots, 9 in total, and continued up toward the refugio. As they got closer, I could make out more details. They wore civilian clothes, but moved with military precision. All of them carried rifles, and they were heading straight for our door. "Garrison Fletcher," one of them called out. Male voice, Italian accent. "Hester Vaughn, we know you are inside. We are not hostile. We need to speak with you." How did they know our names? Hester and I looked at each other. She whispered, "Trap?" Maybe. But they just killed 9 infected to get up here. If they wanted to hurt us, they could probably just burn the building down. Great. Very reassuring. The voice called out again. "Please, we have been searching for survivors. We have a safe location. We can take you there, but we must move quickly." I made a decision, went to the door, removed the table barricade, but didn't open it yet. "Who are you?" I shouted through the wood. "My name is Teodoro Lazzari. I am with the Alpine Rescue. We are evacuating survivors from the mountains before the weather turns." "Alpine Rescue doesn't carry military rifles." A pause. Then, "You are correct. We are not official Alpine Rescue anymore. But we were before. Now we are just trying to save who we can. Please, you must trust me. The infected are gathering. More will come. The gunshots will draw them." He was right about that. Gunshots would carry for miles up here. "How do you know our names?" I called. "Your friend here, she was carrying identification. We found her pack marker in her profile when we scanning for activated emergency beacons. We cross-referenced. American climbers in this region 3 days ago. Please, we are wasting time." That actually made sense. Most serious hikers and climbers registered their trips and carried emergency beacons. If these people had access to that database. Hester touched my arm. "I think we should trust them," she said quietly. "We're going to run out of food up here. And when winter really hits..." She was right. We both knew it. This refugio was a death trap long term. I opened the door. 5 people stood outside in the moonlight, all armed, all watching the approaches. The one who'd been speaking, Teodoro, was a compact man in his 40s, with a graying beard and sharp eyes. He lowered his rifle when he saw us. "Thank God," he said. "We must go now, quickly. Gather essential supplies only. Food, water, warm clothes. We have a vehicle 2 kilometers down. The infected will be converging on this location very soon." "Where are you taking us?" Hester asked. "There is a facility in the mountains. It is secure. Others are there. Food, shelter, medical supplies. You will be safe." "What kind of facility?" I pressed. "Military?" "A resort, luxury spa resort actually, at high elevation. The owners fortified it when the outbreak began. Now it houses maybe 50 survivors. Please, I will explain everything, but we must move." Something felt off about this, but I couldn't articulate what. And the alternative was staying in a freezing refugio with dwindling supplies, while infected accumulated outside. That wasn't sustainable. Hester and I grabbed our packs, took as much food as we could carry, and followed Teodoro and his team out into the night. The moon illuminated the trail in silver light. The bodies of the infected lay where they'd fallen, dark shapes on the white snow. We moved past them quickly, Teodoro's team maintaining a defensive formation around us. 2 people on point, 2 on rear guard, Teodoro beside us in the middle. "How many survivors have you found?" I asked as we descended. "In this region, perhaps 200, maybe less. We searched the refugios and mountain huts. Most are empty. Some," he trailed off. "Some we find bodies. The infected do not seem to like high altitude, but they will climb if they are chasing prey. We lost 12 people last week when a group got trapped in a saddle pass." "What caused this?" Hester asked. "The outbreak? Do you know?" "Theories only. Some say biological weapon. Some say natural mutation of rabies. Some say..." He paused. "Some say God is punishing us. I do not know. I only know that 4 days ago I was a rescue coordinator, and now I am this." We walked in silence for a while, navigating the steep switchbacks. I kept expecting to hear that moaning sound, kept expecting infected to lurch out from the shadows. But the night was quiet, except for our footsteps and breathing. "The people at this resort," I said. "Are they organizing rescue operations? Trying to contact authorities?" "There are no authorities anymore," Teodoro said flatly. "Not here. Rome is gone. Milano is gone. Venice, Firenze, Torino, all gone. The government tried to contain it for maybe 12 hours. Then everything collapsed. The resort is independent, self-sufficient. It is all we have now." "What about outside Italy? Other countries?" "We hear radio transmissions sometimes. France has fallen. Austria has isolated zones still broadcasting. Switzerland has military holding the Alpine passes, but the lowlands are overrun. Germany, we do not know. Beyond Europe?" He shrugged. "We do not know. Our communications are limited." The trail leveled out as we reached a wider section. Ahead I could see where it descended into a forested area. Teodoro signaled a halt, and his point people moved ahead to scout. That's when I heard it, a sound that made my blood freeze. Not the moaning of infected. Something else. Something that sounded almost like singing? It was faint, distant, coming from somewhere in the valley to the east. A human voice, but the melody was wrong. Notes that didn't quite fit together, rising and falling in patterns that made my ears hurt. Teodoro heard it too. His face went pale in the moonlight. "We need to move," he said urgently. "Now, do not listen to the singing. Do not look toward it if you see the source." "What is that?" Hester asked. "Something new. Something that started appearing 2 days ago. We do not understand it. But the people who listen too long, they change. Not like the infected. Something else. Worse." His team was already moving down the trail fast, practically jogging. We followed, the singing getting louder behind us, that wrong melody worming into my brain. I wanted to look back, wanted to see what was making that sound. Had to physically force myself to keep my eyes forward, my feet moving. We entered the forest, and the trees cut off the sound, muffling it to a barely audible whisper. But I could still feel it, like a pressure behind my eyes, like fingers trying to pry open my skull. "What the fuck was that?" I gasped when we finally stopped to catch our breath. "We call them sirens," Teodoro said. "We do not know what they are. People who hear them for too long start walking toward the sound. They do not respond to voices, to threats, to anything. They just walk. And when they reach the source, he shook his head. We have lost people this way. Now we avoid areas where the singing is heard. This outbreak, Hester said, it's not just infection, is it? It's something bigger. Yes, Teodoro said simply. Something much bigger. Something we do not understand. But this is why the resort is important. We are gathering people with skills, doctors, scientists, engineers. We are trying to understand, trying to survive, trying to fight back. We reached the vehicle, an old military transport truck with reinforced sides and a covered bed. 2 more armed guards stood watch beside it. They helped us climb into the back, where about a dozen other people sat on benches. Survivors from other locations, all looking shell-shocked and exhausted. As the truck started moving, grinding down the mountain road, I looked at Hester. She looked back at me. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. We'd left the known danger of the refugio for unknown dangers ahead. But at least we were moving. At least we were trying. The resort, when we reached it 3 hours later, was not what I expected. I'd been picturing something rustic, a mountain lodge, maybe some basic buildings. Instead, we pulled up to what looked like a luxury hotel complex clinging to a high ridge. Multiple buildings connected by covered walkways, solar panels on every roof, a high fence topped with razor wire surrounding the entire compound. Guard towers at corners, spotlights sweeping the approaches. "Welcome to the sanctuary," Teodoro said as the truck passed through a reinforced gate. "It is not much, but it is home." We were processed quickly, but thoroughly. Medical screening, check for bites, scratches, fever. Any symptoms. Decontamination shower, hot water, actual soap, the first real shower I'd had in a week. Clean clothes from donated supply. Personal belongings inventoried and returned. And finally, orientation. A woman named Brigitta, Swedish accent, former hotel manager, gave us the rundown. The resort had been abandoned when the outbreak started, but the owner and about 20 staff had stayed to defend it. Now it housed 230 people, and they were barely holding on. "We have rules," Brigitta explained. "Everyone works, no exceptions. You have skills, you use them. We farm what we can in greenhouses. We ration food strictly. We defend the walls in shifts. We send out scavenging parties to nearby areas. And above all, we maintain security. One infected inside these walls, and we all die. Hester and I were assigned to a shared room, small but clean, with real beds and blankets. We were given meal chits and job assignments. Mine was perimeter security and maintenance. Hers was communications and mapping. That first night at the resort, I lay in an actual bed, under an actual roof, and tried to process everything that had happened. 1 week ago, I'd been a tourist on a hiking trip, biggest worry being whether I'd packed enough socks. Now I was a refugee in a fortified compound during what appeared to be the collapse of civilization. Sleep didn't come easy. Over the next week, I learned the rhythms of the sanctuary. Wake at dawn. Breakfast, usually thin soup or porridge, sometimes bread if the greenhouses had produced enough wheat. Work assignments from 800 to 1800 with a break for lunch. Dinner, maintenance of gear, sleep, repeat. My work on the perimeter meant patrolling the fence line, checking for breaches, reinforcing weak points, and occasionally standing watch in the towers. It was cold, boring work that could turn terrifying in seconds if infected appeared on the approaches. And they did appear. Not in large numbers. We were too high, too remote. But small groups would wander into sight occasionally. Usually just 2 or 3 shambling along the access road or through the surrounding forest. The standing orders were to observe and document, but not engage unless they approached the fence. Ammunition was too precious to waste. From the towers, I could see the valleys below. Smoke still rose from various points, though less than before. Either the fires were burning out or there was nothing left to burn. At night, the lowlands were mostly dark. No city lights, no car headlights, no signs of organized civilization. Just occasional flickering that might have been fires or might have been something else. Hester and I ate meals together, shared observations, tried to make sense of what had happened. She'd been assigned to help maintain the resort's communication setup, a cobbled-together system of ham radios, satellite phones, mostly dead now, and various receivers trying to pick up any broadcasts that might indicate organized resistance or rescue. "We're getting signals," she told me on the third day. "But most of them don't make sense. Some are just automated emergency broadcasts on loop. Some are encrypted military traffic we can't decode. And some..." She lowered her voice. "Some are that singing, the siren sound. It's on multiple frequencies now, like it's spreading." "What does Brigitte say about it?" "She doesn't, won't discuss it. But I've heard people talking. They think the singing is converting radio waves, using them to spread, which sounds insane, but everything about this is insane." On day 5 at the sanctuary, things took a dark turn. A scavenging party went out, 6 people in a truck, heading to a small village about 10 kilometers away to raid a grocery store. Standard operation, they'd done it dozens of times. They radioed back at 1400 hours that they'd reached the target and were beginning the raid. They never radioed again. At 1800 hours, when they were 3 hours overdue, Brigitte called an emergency meeting. The entire population of the sanctuary gathered in the main hall, 230 people, all looking worried. "The Alpha team has not returned," Brigitte announced. "We must assume they are lost. This is the 3rd team we have lost this month. We are running out of experienced scavengers and we are running out of supplies. Our food stores will last maybe 6 more weeks at current rationing. After that..." She didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what came after that. "We need volunteers," she continued. "People willing to join scavenging runs. The work is dangerous, but it is necessary. Without supplies, we all die." Silence. Nobody volunteered. Finally, a man in the back, I'd seen him around, American like me, named Lennox, stood up. "What happened to the other teams? The ones that didn't come back?" "Do we know?" "No," Brigitte said. "They simply stopped responding. We must assume they encountered infected or other hazards." "Other hazards like the singing things?" "Possibly. We do not know." "So you're asking us to volunteer for suicide missions with no real intel on what killed the last 3 teams?" "I am asking you to help ensure our survival. If we do not scavenge, we starve." Lennox sat down, shaking his head. I looked at Hester. She looked back at me. We both knew what the other was thinking. We'd joined this place for safety, but safety was an illusion. The sanctuary was just a slower way to die. That night, Hester and I sat on the roof of our building, technically against the rules, but nobody was enforcing it strictly. The stars were out, brilliant in the thin mountain air. And from up here, we could see the whole compound laid out below, the walls, the towers, the buildings with their dim lights, and beyond it all, the dark masses of the mountains. "I think we should volunteer," Hester said quietly. "For the scavenging teams?" "Yeah. Look, we're going to die here if we just wait. Food runs out, then what? We turn on each other? I've seen how that goes. I'd rather die trying to do something than die passively waiting." I couldn't argue with her logic. When's the next run? Brigida said tomorrow morning. They're hitting a pharmacy in a different village. Need medical supplies. You know this is probably a bad idea. Oh, definitely. But all the ideas are bad now. This is just a different flavor of bad. We volunteered the next morning. Brigida tried to talk us out of it. We were new, untrained for this kind of work. But she needed bodies, and eventually she agreed. We were paired with 4 others. Teodoro, who'd rescued us from the refugio, a former nurse named Petra, an Italian local named Silvio who knew the area, and another American named Yael who'd been with the sanctuary since the beginning. Our target was a pharmacy in a small town called Castello di Montagna, about 15 kilometers down the mountain. The town had been hit hard early in the outbreak, but recent drone reconnaissance showed minimal infected activity. The pharmacy was on the main street, easily accessible, and should have a good supply of antibiotics, pain meds, and other necessities. The plan was simple. Drive in fast, send 3 people into the pharmacy while 3 covered the exits, grab everything we could carry, drive out. Total time on ground, 20 minutes maximum. We left at dawn in the same military truck I'd arrived in. Teodoro drove, Silvio riding shotgun with a hunting rifle. The rest of us in the back, checking our weapons and gear. I'd been issued a shotgun, a simple pump action, 5 shells, plus 10 more in my pack. Hester had a pistol. We'd both been given a crash course in using them yesterday. Aim for the head, Teodoro had instructed. The infected will keep coming otherwise. And do not waste ammunition. Every shot must count. The drive down the mountain was tense. We passed through zones of forest and open terrain, crossed switchbacks and narrow bridges. Twice we saw infected in the distance, lone figures wandering aimlessly. Once we passed a burned-out car sitting nose down in a ravine. Castello di Montagna appeared below us around a curve. A cluster of stone buildings along a river valley, population maybe 1,500 before the outbreak. Now the streets were empty, cars abandoned at odd angles, windows broken. Smoke stains marked several buildings, but no visible infected. Too quiet, Silvio muttered. Should be more of them. Maybe they moved on, Petra suggested, following sounds or survivors somewhere else. Maybe, Silvio said, but he didn't sound convinced. We rolled into town slowly, Teodoro navigating around abandoned vehicles, always keeping an exit route clear. The pharmacy was exactly where the map said it would be. A small storefront with a green cross sign, bars on the windows, door hanging open. Door is breached, Teodoro observed. Someone has been inside already. Could be picked clean. Only one way to find out, Yael said. We parked the truck directly in front of the pharmacy, engine running. Yael, Petra, and I would enter. Teodoro, Silvio, and Hester would maintain perimeter and cover our exit. The street was utterly silent as we approached. I could hear my own breathing, could hear every footstep on the pavement. The open door looked like a mouth waiting to swallow us. Yael went first, rifle up, sweeping the interior. Clear, she whispered. Looks intact. They didn't reach the back storage. We moved inside. The main retail area had been ransacked, shelves knocked over, pill bottles scattered, the register torn open. But Yael was right about the storage. The door to the back was still locked, and when Silvio had taught me some basic lockpicking yesterday, I was able to get it open in under a minute. The storage room was a treasure trove. Shelves stacked with medication, supplies, bandages, everything we needed. We started loading our packs, working quickly but methodically, taking the most critical items first. Antibiotics, pain relievers, antiseptics, bandages, IV supplies. That's when we heard Hester shout, "Contacts, multiple, north side." I ran to the front door. Up the street, maybe 200 meters away, a group of infected was emerging from between buildings. I counted quickly, 12, 15, maybe more. They'd spotted our truck and were moving toward it with that awful shambling gait. "How long do we have?" Teodoro called out. 3 minutes, maybe 4, Silvio responded. "Finish loading," Yael ordered. "We can make it." We grabbed everything we could carry, packs bulging with supplies. As we emerged from the pharmacy, the infected were close enough that I could hear them, that wet, moaning sound, building as more of them joined in. The sound echoed off the buildings, making it impossible to tell how many there really were. "In the truck," Teodoro shouted. "Now!" We ran. I was last, and as I reached the truck bed, I heard a crash behind me. One of the infected had gotten close enough to knock over a trash can. I spun, brought the shotgun up, saw its gray face maybe 10 feet away. Fired. The blast took it in the chest and it went down, but immediately 2 more appeared behind it. "Garrison, move!" Hester screamed. I jumped into the truck bed and Teodoro gunned the engine. We lurched forward and I nearly fell out before Hester grabbed my jacket and hauled me in. Behind us, the infected flooded the street, a wave of gray flesh and torn clothes, their moaning rising to a wail. But we were faster. We left them behind, roaring up out of the valley, back toward the mountain. "Everyone okay?" Yael called out. "Anyone bit? Scratched?" We checked each other. Nothing. We'd gotten lucky. The trip back to the sanctuary was almost celebratory. We'd succeeded where 3 other teams had failed. We had supplies. Nobody was hurt. When we rolled through the gates an hour later, people actually cheered. Brigitte personally oversaw the inventory of what we'd brought back. "This is good," she said, almost smiling. "This will help. You all did well." That night there was extra rations at dinner. Not much, but enough to notice. People congratulated us, asked questions about the run, treated us like heroes. It felt good, I'll admit. After days of feeling helpless, of just surviving, it felt good to contribute, to matter. Hester and I celebrated in our room with the bottle of grappa I'd found in the refugio weeks ago. We passed it back and forth, feeling the burn, feeling the tension of the day fade. "We make a good team," she said. "Yeah, we do." "Think we should do another run?" "Absolutely not." We both laughed because we knew we would. We'd volunteer again and again, because that's what you did now. You took risks or you died slowly. Those were the options. I fell asleep that night, feeling something approaching contentment, which should have been my first warning that things were about to go wrong. Because they did go wrong. Very wrong. It started 2 days later, during the early morning watch. I was in Tower 3, bundled against the cold, scanning the approaches with binoculars. Routine stuff. The sun was just coming up, painting the peaks pink and gold, when I heard someone scream. Not from outside the walls, from inside the compound. I turned and looked down into the sanctuary's main yard. People were running, shouting, pointing at one of the residential buildings. Smoke was pouring from a second-floor window. Fire. I abandoned my post and ran. By the time I reached the building, 30 or 40 people had gathered, some trying to organize a water brigade from the cistern, others just standing there in shock. Brigitte arrived, started shouting orders, but the fire was spreading fast. Those old wooden buildings, dry from central heating, they went up like kindling. "Is anyone inside?" someone yelled. The German couple, the Zimmermans, they're on that floor. Teodoro and Silvio ran into the building, came out 30 seconds later dragging two people, a man and woman, maybe 60 years old, unconscious but alive. Behind them, flames were visible in the windows. "We cannot save the building," Brigitte said. "Focus on containment, wet down the adjacent structures, move supplies away from the fire zone." We worked for 3 hours, a bucket brigade from the cistern, spraying water on the buildings next to the burning one. The fire consumed the entire structure. 3 stories, maybe 20 rooms, all the belongings of the 40 people who lived there. By the time it burned itself out, all that remained was a blackened shell. The Zimmermans recovered enough to talk by midday. They said they'd been asleep when they smelled smoke. Woke up to find their room already filling with it. No idea how the fire started, just that it was fast and hot and they barely escaped. Brigitte ordered an investigation. 2 days later, we had an answer. Arson. One of the survivors, a man named Donal, Irish, 40-ish, had been showing signs of psychological breakdown for weeks. Paranoid, aggressive, claiming that the sanctuary was a trap, that Brigitte was planning to kill people to conserve resources. Nobody had taken him seriously. Turned out we should have. He'd snapped, decided to expose the truth by setting the fire. His room had been in the burned building. He died in the fire he started. The investigation found evidence of 3 other caches of accelerant hidden around the compound. He'd been planning more fires. Would have killed us all if the first fire hadn't taken him out. The mood in the sanctuary changed after that. People were jumpy, suspicious. Small disputes turned into shouting matches. Someone stole food from the communal stores, and there was a near riot when they were caught. Brigitte had to post armed guards at the food storage. "We are falling apart," Teodoro said to me one night. "The infected are outside the walls, but we are our own worst enemy." He was right. The stress, the confinement, the fear, it was eating away at us. And winter was coming. Real winter, the kind that would trap us here for months. 2 weeks after the fire, Brigitte called another meeting. This time she looked worse, thinner, older, exhausted. "We have problems," she said bluntly. "Multiple problems. First, our food stores are critically low. Even with rationing, we have perhaps 4 weeks remaining. Second, our fuel for the generators is nearly gone. When it runs out, we lose heat, lose power for the greenhouses, lose our ability to defend effectively at night. Third, morale is collapsing. We have had 3 attempted suicides this week. People are breaking." Silence in the hall. Nobody had solutions. "I am proposing something radical," Brigitte continued. "We need to relocate. This place is not sustainable long term. There is another facility, lower in the mountains, nearer to supply sources. A monastery that was converted to a research station. We have radio contact with them. They have food, fuel, better defenses. They have agreed to take us in." "How far?" someone asked. 80 kilometers, 2 days of travel by foot, 1 day by vehicle if we can secure enough fuel. And between here and there, infected, possibly hundreds, and the singing zones. We will have to navigate carefully. The debate went on for hours. Some people wanted to stay. Better to die here than risk the journey. Others wanted to go. At least there was a chance with relocation. Eventually, it came to a vote. The relocation won, barely. 120 votes in favor, 110 against. Preparations began immediately. We'd move in 1 week, taking only what we could carry. The elderly and injured would go in vehicles. We had 3 trucks we could fuel for the journey. Everyone else would walk. Armed escorts would protect the convoy. It would be the most dangerous thing any of us had attempted. Hester and I both volunteered for the armed escort. Of course we did. By now it was almost automatic. If there was danger, we walked toward it. Maybe we had a death wish. Maybe we just couldn't stand the waiting anymore. The night before the exodus, I couldn't sleep. I went up to the roof again, looked out at the mountains. A storm was building in the west. I could see lightning flickering in the clouds. Snow was coming, the first real snow of winter. Hester found me there. "Having second thoughts?" she asked. "About 100, I said. "You?" "Same. But we don't really have a choice, do we?" "No, I guess we don't." She sat down next to me, and we watched the lightning together. After a while, she said, "You know, before all this, I'd been thinking about quitting my job, traveling more, living different. Turns out the universe had plans. Funny how that works. If we make it through this, through tomorrow, through the winter, through whatever comes next, I think I'm going to try to find my sister. She was in grad school in California. Maybe she made it. Maybe she found somewhere safe. My brother said he was heading to a cabin in Oregon. If I ever get back to the States, I'm going to try to find him too." "It's good to have a reason to keep going," Hester said. "Even if it's just maybe seeing someone again." The convoy left at dawn. 230 people in a ragged line, 3 trucks, armed guards at front and rear, sides covered by people on foot with whatever weapons we could scrounge. I was near the front with Teodoro, shotgun loaded, extra shells in my coat pockets. The gates of the sanctuary opened one last time, and we walked out into the gray morning. I need to pause here and explain something about the journey that followed, because my memory of it is fragmented. Some parts are crystal clear, individual moments burned into my brain. Other parts are just gone, lost to exhaustion or fear or whatever psychological survival mechanism kicks in when things get too overwhelming. But I'll tell you what I remember. Day 1 of the journey was relatively smooth. We followed a dirt road that wound down the mountain, passing through zones of forest and open meadow. We saw infected, maybe a dozen individuals scattered across the landscape. But our size and organization seemed to deter them. They watched us pass but didn't approach. Around noon, we stopped to rest and eat. Cold food, no fires to avoid attracting attention. People were nervous, but holding together. The 3 trucks had made it through the rough road without incident. Scouts reported the route ahead was clear. We made another 15 kilometers before dark, camping in an abandoned ski lodge. The building was a shell. No power, no water, everything salvaged long ago. But it had walls and a roof and space for everyone. We posted guards and tried to sleep. That's when the singing started. It came from somewhere to the south, distant but clear in the cold night air. That same wrong melody I'd heard weeks ago, notes that didn't quite fit together, rising and falling in patterns that hurt to hear. "Do not listen," Brigida ordered. "Cover your ears. Focus on other sounds." But you couldn't not listen. It wormed into your head, made you want to look toward it, made you want to walk toward it. I saw people standing up, faces blank, starting to move toward the doors. Teodoro and others physically restrained them. "Fight it," he shouted. "Do not give in." The singing continued for 3 hours. By the end, 10 people had been restrained, and all of them were weeping, begging to be released, saying they needed to go toward the sound, saying it was calling them. saying it would make everything better. When the singing finally stopped, those 10 people collapsed, exhausted. Most fell asleep immediately. 2 just stared into space, unresponsive. "We need to move at first light," Brigida said, "before it starts again." We left in the pre-dawn dark, stumbling over roots and rocks, desperate to put distance between us and the singing zone. By full daylight, we were 10 kilometers farther down the mountain, and the singing was too distant to hear. But we'd lost people. Sometime during the night, while everyone was focused on the singing, 5 people had slipped away, just vanished into the darkness. Scouts searched for an hour but found nothing. We had to leave them behind. Day 2 was worse. The road we were following descended into a valley, and the valley was full of infected. Not dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands. They filled the roads, the fields, the spaces between buildings. A sea of gray flesh and torn clothes, all of them moving in the same direction, north toward the mountains. "They are migrating," Silvio said, staring at the mass through binoculars. "Like animals before winter, they are going somewhere." "We cannot go through that," Brigida said. "We need an alternate route." We spent 6 hours backtracking and trying to find a way around the valley. Finally found a goat path that cut through the mountains to the east. Narrow, steep, barely passable. The trucks couldn't make it. We'd have to abandon them. That meant the elderly and injured had to walk. Some couldn't. We made the hardest decision. Brigitte selected 20 people who would stay behind in a defensible position. A shepherd's hut higher up the mountain, while the rest of us went ahead. Once we reached the monastery, we'd send back a rescue party with vehicles. Those 20 people knew they'd probably never see that rescue party. But they agreed. What else could they do? We left them with as much food as we could spare, all the weapons we could spare, and the promise we'd come back. I don't know if any of us believed it. The goat path took us 2 days to traverse. 2 days of scrambling over rocks, navigating ledges barely wide enough to walk, climbing through snow and ice at elevation. 4 people fell. 2 survived with broken bones that we splinted with branches and spare clothing. 2 didn't survive at all. We had to leave their bodies where they fell. When we finally descended the other side of the ridge, we'd lost 37 people from our group. Started with 230, now had 193. The numbers kept shrinking. The monastery appeared on the 4th day of travel. A massive stone complex built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by terraced gardens and high walls. Lights shone in the windows. Solar panels covered the roofs. A watchtower at the entrance showed armed guards. We'd made it. Or so I thought. As we approached, a voice called out from the tower, "Stop there! Identify yourselves!" "Sanctuary refugees," Brigida called back. "We have been in contact with your leader, Dr. Osbert. We are expected." A long pause. Then, "How many?" "Nearly 200. Another pause, longer this time. I saw figures moving on the walls, heard what sounded like arguing. "Finally, send 3 representatives to the gate. The rest of you stay back." Brigida selected Teodoro and another senior member to accompany her. They walked to the gate, which opened just enough to admit them, then closed again. We waited for an hour. People were getting restless, nervous. Something felt wrong. When the gate finally opened again, only Brigitte emerged. She walked back to our group slowly. And when she got close enough for me to see her face, I knew it was bad news. "They have denied us entry," she said quietly. "All of us." Chaos. People shouting, demanding answers, some crying, some looking ready to attack the monastery. "Please!" Brigida shouted over the noise. "Please listen. The monastery has suffered an outbreak. 3 days ago, someone became infected inside their walls. They lost 50 people before they contained it. They are at capacity, running low on supplies, and they cannot risk allowing any of us inside. I am sorry, but we cannot stay here." "Then where do we go?" someone screamed. "We have no food, no shelter. Winter is here." Brigida had no answer. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked completely defeated. That's when Hester spoke up. "The Refugio," she said, "where Garrison and I were. It's isolated, defensible, and there's a whole network of them in these mountains. Multiple sites we could use. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. That is 20 kilometers back the way we came." Someone protested. "Through infected zones? And going anywhere else is farther through worse zones," Hester shot back. "At least the refugios are high elevation. The infected don't like high altitude as much. We'd be safer there than down here." People looked at each other, trying to find a better option, knowing there wasn't one. "We need to decide quickly," Teodoro said. "Before dark." In the end, we voted to head for the refugios. 153 people agreed. 40 decided to try their luck elsewhere. Some wanted to continue north, some wanted to descend into lowlands and search for other survivors. Some just wanted to go their own way. Brigida tried to convince them to stay together, but her authority was breaking. People were done following orders. The group splintered. Hester and I stayed with the main group, the 153 heading back toward the mountains. Teodoro came with us, Silvio, Petra, Yael, others I'd gotten to know over the weeks. We weren't a cohesive group anymore, just scared people trying to survive. The journey back was a nightmare. We had almost no food, limited ammunition, and winter weather was closing in fast. We lost people to exposure, to accidents, to infected attacks. By the time we reached the Refugio network, 5 buildings scattered across a high ridge. We were down to 97 people, 97 out of the original 230. We split the survivors across the 5 refugios, 20 people to each one. Hester and I claimed the original one, Refugio Pues, where this whole thing had started for me. Teodoro, Petra, and Yael joined us, along with 15 others. And here we are. It's been 6 weeks since we holed up in these refugios. 6 weeks of slowly starving, of cold that never stops, of watching the snow pile up higher and higher outside until we can barely open the doors. We've survived by scavenging from the other refugios when people don't make it. That sounds horrible, and it is. But we take their food, their clothes, their firewood, because we're alive and they're not. And that's how it works now. We've survived by eating things I never thought I'd eat. Pine bark boiled into a bitter tea, lichens scraped from rocks. Once, we found a marmot frozen in the snow. It gave us protein for 3 days. We've survived by keeping a fire going at all times, burning furniture when the firewood ran out, burning books when the furniture was gone, burning anything that would create heat. And we've survived by not giving up, by waking up each morning and deciding to make it one more day. But I don't know how much longer we can keep this going. Let me tell you about our situation right now, today, as I write this. I want to be clear about exactly how bad things are. Because if someone finds this account after we're gone, they need to understand what we faced. We are down to 11 people. 20 started in this refugio, and now there are 11. We lost Teodoro to pneumonia 2 weeks ago. Lost Petra when she slipped on ice while trying to reach another refugio and fell 100 feet. Lost Yael just 3 days ago. She went to sleep and didn't wake up. Her heart just stopped. Exhaustion, malnutrition, cold. Take your pick. The other refugios are in similar shape. We have radio contact, old walkie-talkies with batteries we've babied for weeks. Last communication, Refugio Firenze reported 8 people alive. Refugio Lagazuoi had 12. Refugio Scotoni had 5. Refugio Genova stopped responding a week ago. We have no food. The last of it ran out yesterday. We're melting snow for water and that's it. Our bodies are consuming themselves. I can count my ribs. My pants fall off if I don't tie them with rope. The cold is the worst part. The fire is down to embers now. We burned the last of the doors yesterday. Once that's gone, we'll freeze. Hypothermia takes you fast at this elevation when you're already malnourished. And the infected are still out there. We see them sometimes, down on the trails, still wandering. Not as many. Winter has thinned their numbers too. But enough. Enough that if we tried to descend, we'd never make it. The singing has gotten closer. We hear it almost every night now, echoing through the valleys. Some of our people have been affected. They stare toward the sound, whisper about how beautiful it is, how they need to go see what's making it. We have to physically restrain them. This is the end, I think. This is where my story terminates. I've survived the outbreak, survived the journey, survived 6 weeks in this frozen hell. But I don't think I'm going to survive much longer. Which brings me to why I'm writing this all down. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand what happened here. How the world ended. How we tried to keep going, even when everything was gone. If you're reading this, if you found this notebook in the Refugio, if you somehow survived long enough to reach this place, then you're either very lucky or very skilled or both. Here's what I can tell you that might help. The infected don't climb well. Use elevation. They follow sound, but not consistently. Sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. And I never figured out why. Avoid them when possible, but if you have to fight, aim for the head. They can take tremendous damage to the body and keep coming. The singing, the sirens, whatever they are, is the bigger threat. Avoid areas where you hear it. Cover your ears if you can't avoid it. If someone in your group becomes affected, restrain them immediately and get away from the source. I don't know what the sirens are or what happens to people who reach them. But based on Teodoro's stories, it's nothing good. Stay high. The lowlands are death. Cities are gone. Towns are overrun. Your best chance is elevation, isolation, places where the infected don't naturally go. Other survivors do exist. We met them, joined with them, split from them, but trust carefully. Desperation makes people do terrible things. The fire at the sanctuary proved that. Food is the limiting factor. Everything else, shelter, water, defense, you can manage if you're smart. But food runs out. And when it does, your options get very limited very quickly. Have a plan for that. Garden if you can. Hunt if there's game. Preserve everything. Stay sane. That sounds obvious, but it's harder than you think. The isolation, the fear, the constant stress, it eats at your mind. Talk to people. Write things down. Create routines. Find reasons to keep going beyond just survival. I've been thinking about Hollis a lot these last few days. My brother, up in that cabin in Oregon. I hope he made it. I hope he got Marin and the kids somewhere safe. I hope he's looking at the same stars I'm looking at and thinking about me too. I've been thinking about Tabitha, my ex-wife. That last email she sent. Please be safe wherever you are. I wish I could tell her I tried. I really tried. I've been thinking about all the people I lost. Teodoro, who saved me that first night. Petra, who taught me how to splint a broken bone and dress a wound. Yael, who kept making dark jokes even when everything was falling apart. The Zimmermans, who died in that fire. All the nameless people who fell on the journey or starved in the refugios or just gave up. And I've been thinking about Hester. She's still here, still fighting, even though she's just as weak as I am. Yesterday, she managed to kill a bird, a raven that landed too close to the window. We roasted it over the embers and split it between the 11 of us. Each person got maybe 2 bites of meat. But it was something. It was hope, however small. "We're going to make it," Hester said while we were eating. "Spring will come, the snow will melt, we'll be able to move again. We'll find food. We'll survive." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the calendar I've been marking says it's early December. Spring is 4 months away. We have food for 0 days and heat for maybe 1 more. The math doesn't work. But I didn't say that to Hester. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, we'll make it." Because sometimes the lie is kinder than the truth. It's dark now. The fire is almost out. The cold is seeping through the walls. Outside, the wind is howling and the snow is falling again, covering the mountains in white. Beautiful and lethal. I should stop writing and sleep, save my energy. But I don't want to sleep. I'm afraid that if I sleep, I won't wake up. Like Yael, just drift off and that's it. The end. So I'll keep writing for a while longer. Keep my mind occupied. Keep the fear at bay. Where was I? Right. The singing. Let me tell you more about the sirens, because that's the part that still doesn't make sense. The infection, that's almost understandable. A virus, a parasite, a biological agent that rewires the brain and creates aggressive behavior. Horrifying, but at least it follows rules we understand. But the sirens? That's something else entirely. Something that doesn't fit into any framework I know. From what I gathered at the sanctuary, before it fell apart, there were multiple theories. Some people thought the sirens were another form of infected, maybe a later stage of the disease, something that happened to people who survived the initial infection, but were exposed to it for extended periods. The singing was how they attracted prey. Others thought they were something separate. Maybe a second outbreak, maybe something that had always been in the mountains, but was only noticed now because civilization had collapsed. Maybe something ancient, some legend made real. I remember one night at the sanctuary, before the fire, there was a geologist named Dr. Wembley who'd been studying the phenomenon. She was convinced the sirens were linked to geological features, deep caves and underground water systems. She thought they were using acoustics, resonating frequencies through natural amplification chambers. "It's not supernatural," she insisted. "It's physics. Sound can do incredible things if you understand how to manipulate it. It can shatter glass, it can cause tissue damage, it can even affect neural activity if the frequency is right." "But how are they generating these frequencies?" someone asked. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." Dr. Wembley was one of the people who left when the group split at the monastery. I don't know if she's still alive, still pursuing her theories. I hope she is. I hope she figured it out. I hope someone understands what's happening and why. All I know is that the singing is real, it's dangerous, and it's spreading. Those first few weeks, we'd only hear it occasionally, always distant. Now it's multiple times per night, from multiple directions. Like whatever makes that sound is multiplying, expanding territory, claiming the mountains. 2 nights ago, the singing got close enough that I could almost make out words. Not quite. It was still that wrong, non-human melody. But there were sounds that could have been syllables, could have been language. Hester heard it too. "It's saying something," she whispered. "Can you hear it?" I could, or thought I could. But the moment I tried to focus on the words, my head would hurt and the meaning would slip away. The restraints are becoming necessary more often now. Last night, 3 people tried to leave, to walk out into the storm toward the singing. We had to tie them to the support beams until the singing stopped. They begged us the entire time, cried, promised they'd be fine, said the song was beautiful, said it would save us all, said we were the ones who were wrong. When the singing finally stopped, they slumped in their bonds, exhausted. One of them, a young guy named Harper, looked at me with these hollow eyes and said, "It's going to take us all eventually. You know that, right? It's patient. It can wait." Maybe he's right. There's been something else too. Something I haven't told anyone except Hester. I've been having dreams. Vivid, detailed dreams that don't feel like dreams. In them, I'm walking through the mountains. But they're not the mountains as they are now, frozen and dead and overrun with infected. These are living mountains, green and warm, with rivers that run clear and forests that sing with birds. And there are people in these dreams. Hundreds of people, thousands, all walking in the same direction I'm walking, toward something, toward a city maybe, or a gathering place, somewhere safe. And in the dreams, I'm not alone. Hester is there. Hollis is there. Tabitha, my parents, Georgina, people I knew from before. All of us walking together, healthy and whole, toward this place we can't quite see but know is there. The dreams feel more real than reality. When I wake up, back to the cold refugio, the hunger, the fear, it takes me a few seconds to remember where I am. And for those few seconds, the disappointment is crushing. Hester says she has similar dreams. So does Harper and Silvio, one of the 11 still alive in our refugio, and others. We compare notes sometimes. The details are different for everyone, but the core is the same. Walking through beautiful mountains towards something that promises safety and peace. Maybe it's our brains trying to cope, I suggested to Hester once, giving us escapism because reality is too hard. Or maybe, she said, it's the singing. Maybe that's how it gets you. First the dreams, making you want something, then the waking compulsion to go find it. That's a terrifying thought. If she's right, then all of us in this refugio are already compromised, already infected with whatever the sirens do, just waiting for the right moment to walk out into the snow and never come back. I want to believe she's wrong. But given everything that's happened, given how completely reality has broken down, I can't rule it out. The wind just picked up outside. I can hear it screaming around the corners of the building, driving snow against the shutters. The temperature in here is maybe 20 degrees. We're all huddled together for warmth, 11 bodies sharing body heat, wrapped in every blanket and piece of clothing we have. The fire is dead now. Used the last embers to melt snow for water about an hour ago. No more fuel. When the sun comes up, we'll have to decide. Do we try to burn more furniture, tear out more floorboards, dismantle the building itself? Or do we try to move? Try to reach one of the other refugios, where maybe they have more supplies? Both options are terrible. Burning the refugio from the inside out destroys our shelter. Moving through this storm is suicide. But staying here and freezing is also suicide. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't think anyone does. Harper is crying quietly in the corner. Silvio is staring at the ceiling, lips moving like he's praying or talking to someone who isn't there. A woman named Octavia is trying to sing, actual human singing, old songs from before. Like she's trying to drown out the memory of the siren sound. Her voice is hoarse and weak, but she keeps going. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air. I should stop writing and try to sleep. Conserve energy. But I'm afraid. Afraid of the cold. Afraid of the dreams. Afraid that I'll close my eyes and never open them again. Hester is asleep next to me. Her breathing is shallow. In the dim light filtering through the shutters, I can see how thin she's gotten. Her face is all angles now, skin stretched tight over bone. We all look like that, like animated skeletons, like we're already dead and just don't know it yet. I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told anyone, not even Hester. I've been thinking about giving up. Not suicide exactly. I don't have the energy for that, but just stopping. Walking out into the snow when no one's looking and letting the cold take me. It would be quick. They say hypothermia is peaceful near the end. You get warm, sleepy. You just drift off. Easier than this. Easier than watching everyone around me die slowly. Easier than the hunger and the cold and the fear. The only thing stopping me is the possibility, however remote, that someone might come. That rescue might still happen. That somewhere, someone is organizing. Rebuilding, planning to reclaim the mountains. And if I give up now, I'll miss it. I'll die hours or days before salvation arrives. That's the hope that keeps me going. It's a stupid hope, a desperate hope. But it's all I have. Actually, that's not true. I have Hester. I have Silvio and Harper and Octavia and the others. We're still a group, still functioning, still human despite everything trying to make us not human. Yesterday, when we split that raven, Harper said something that stuck with me. He said, "We're going to have stories to tell after this, if we survive. Stories that no one will believe. If we survive." Two very big words. The snow is letting up. I can see it through the cracks. Dawn is coming, gray and cold. Another day, another chance, another roll of the dice. I need to wake everyone up. We need to make decisions. Need to figure out how we're going to make it through today. But first, I'm going to finish writing this entry, because I want there to be a record. If we don't make it, when we don't make it, someone should know we were here, that we tried, that we fought to the very end. My name is Garrison Fletcher. I'm 42 years old. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I came to Italy to hike the Dolomites and clear my head after a bad year. Instead, I witnessed the end of the world. I've been trapped in this mountain refugio for what feels like forever. I've seen things I'll never be able to forget. I've lost people I cared about. I've learned that humans are capable of both incredible cruelty and incredible kindness, often in the same breath. I've learned that survival isn't about being strong or prepared or lucky. It's about making it to tomorrow. And then the day after that, and then the day after that. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time. I've learned that hope is a strange thing. It should be the first thing to die in a situation like this. But somehow it persists, this stubborn little flame that refuses to go out, no matter how hard the wind blows. And I've learned that we're not alone. Even in this isolation, even in this darkness, we're connected. All of us struggling, all of us fighting, all of us hoping. The people in the other refugios, the people who left the convoy, the people hiding in valleys and caves and ruins across these mountains and beyond. We're all part of the same story. That has to mean something. It has to. Okay, the sun is up. Time to stop writing and start surviving again. If you find this notebook, if you're reading these words, know that we existed, know that we tried. And if you're alive to read this, then maybe there's still hope after all. Maybe the story isn't over. Maybe... Wait. I hear something. It's not the wind. It's not the infected. It's a helicopter. I can hear a helicopter. Everyone's awake now, scrambling to the windows. Yes, there it is. Coming over the eastern ridge, flying low, searching. It's got markings. I can't make them out from here, but they look official. Military or rescue or something organized. Hester is crying. Harper is shouting. We're all shouting, waving, trying to signal. It's turning toward us. It sees the refugio. It's coming this way. I don't know if this is real. I don't know if I'm dreaming or hallucinating or if the cold has finally broken my mind. But that helicopter is real, and it's landing on the flat area below the refugio, and people are getting out, and they're carrying supplies, and they're waving at us. We're saved. After everything, after all the death and fear and suffering, we're actually saved. I'm going to stop writing now. I'm going to go outside and meet those people and find out what happens next. Find out if there's a world left to return to. Find out if my brother survived, if anyone I knew survived, if humanity is going to make it through this. But before I go, I want to say this. To whoever finds this notebook, whether it's tomorrow or a year from now or 100 years from now, we survived. Against all odds, against everything that tried to kill us, we survived. And if we can do it, so can you. Don't give up. Don't stop fighting. Don't let the darkness win. There's always another day, always another chance, always another helicopter coming over the ridge. You just have to survive long enough to see it. This is Garrison Fletcher signing off. I'm going home, or whatever's left of it. Wish me luck. The notebook was found 6 months later by a military recovery team sweeping the Dolomites region. Of the 11 survivors who were rescued that December morning, 9 made it back to resettlement camps in Switzerland. Garrison Fletcher and Hester Vaughn both survived and participated in the Alpine Survivor Documentation Project, providing crucial intelligence about the siren phenomenon and the behavioral patterns of the infected at high altitude. The other refugios mentioned in the journal were investigated. Refugio Geneva was found collapsed under snow. No survivors. Refugio Firenze had 3 living occupants. Refugio Lagazuoi had none. Evidence suggested they had attempted descent during a storm and were lost. Refugio Scotoni was empty. Whether the occupants were rescued, died, or left of their own accord remains unknown. The sirens referenced in the journal became a focus of intense research. Analysis of acoustic recordings and survivor testimonies suggested a form of mass psychogenic illness combined with possible infrasound manipulation by unknown sources. Several expedition teams were lost, attempting to locate the source of the singing. The phenomenon ceased approximately 8 months after initial outbreak, and no definitive explanation was ever established. Garrison Fletcher successfully located his brother Hollis, who had survived in the Oregon cabin with his family. They were reunited in July at a relocation center in Montana. Hester Vaughn never found her sister. Records indicate her sister's last known location was a university campus in Los Angeles, which was declared a total loss zone. The global population was reduced by an estimated 74% during the outbreak and subsequent collapse. Recovery efforts are ongoing. This journal stands as one of the more complete first-hand accounts from the Alpine Theater of Operations during the crisis winter of 2026-2027. It has been preserved in the archives of human survival and is made available for educational and historical purposes. We remember, we rebuild, we endure.